Hey everyone, it is Jay Cottrell with LPT Realty here in the Tri-Cities, and it's time for another monthly market update. So we're going to take a look back at May and see how May ended up with a little bit of year-to-date mixed in as well. But I really want to make this video quick because I know nobody wants to sit and watch a 30-minute video going over sales data. So I'm going to move along at a much faster pace, not to try to skip over stuff, but really just hit the high points while giving you a quick glimpse of some of the data. That way, if there is a graph or thing that interests you, you can just hit pause on the video to get a better look at it. So, what do you say we go ahead and get started? Okay, so again, well, this is June 13th. We only have data through the end of the month of May. So that's what we're going to look like. That's what we're going to look at. And first, I want to just give a quick mortgage rate update, let you know if you haven't been paying attention where kind of mortgage rates are. We're going to take a glimpse at the national real estate picture. Then we're going to dive into the local real estate picture. So mortgage rates, I just pulled this today right before the video. You can see a 30-year fixed on average is about 6.97%, and that range is about 6.6 to 8%. That's going to be people with bad credit, low down payments, those types of things. You can see 15-year fixed, the average right now is about 6.38%. But those change pretty much daily. And that's just kind of a glimpse at where they are. They've been sitting above 7% for several weeks, so it's nice to see them jump back down. This is what they've looked like over the last 12 months. So it's definitely been an increasing rate environment, definitely below the peak of 8%. But what I want to continuously remind everybody is if we take a broader look at mortgage rates over time, you can see that right where we're at is pretty much a little bit lower than the average over the decades, because you can see that there are many more years on this graph that had higher rates than this one that had lower rates. So to put it, just to keep that in perspective, I mean, 6.97%, I think my first mortgage back in 2007 or 2006 was, 7%. So it's just a matter of perspective. Yes, it's way higher than the 2.5% that we saw just 3 years ago, but on a historical perspective, it's still really good interest rates. These rates should not be holding you back buying simply because of the rate. But obviously, it does affect what you can afford. So if you can't afford what you want, then that's a different story. As far as the national real estate picture, this is from Bill McBride. He says he always likes to start with inventory, which I do as well. He says currently inventory is increasing year over year, but it is still below pre-pandemic levels. So you're going to see that similar sentiment here in our local market. And if you look at the inventory over the years, these are graphs that I've shown similar with our local data. Yes, inventory is higher this year than it was in 2023, 2022, 2021, and 2020. But prior to that, it's still not even close to where we were before the pandemic. In the current market, rising prices are the direct result of insufficient housing supply not meeting full demand. That's a quote from Lawrence Yun, chief economist for the NAR. So you already saw that supply, that yes, we have more supply, not near where we were prior to the pandemic. And as this shows, the showing index, which is indicative of showing activity, buyer activity, is still higher than pre-pandemic levels. So while the supply is only slightly higher, the demand is still much higher than pre-pandemic levels. And don't forget, here locally in 2018, 2019, we were still in a seller's market then. We still didn't have balanced market conditions. It's just we've moved from a slight seller's market into a deep seller's market, and we're having a hard time getting out of that hole. As you can see, with barely increasing supply and steadily increasing demand, sales prices in every region of the US have gone up so far this year. Now, again, oops, that says April, it should say May. I'll fix it on the final edit. Local real estate market. This is going to give you our local data. If we look at the number of new listings hitting the market, you can see that the new listings are outpacing last year by about 22% for the month of May. However, that is still down from pre-pandemic levels at 2019. And again, 2019, we still had a seller's market and still had low inventory levels here in our area. And also January and March those months were less than the same months last year. If you do an aggregate year to date, new listings are only up about 7%. So that's not a huge increase of homes hitting the market. The total listing count, this looks at the number of active listings, pending listings, and sold listings to give us a general total picture of sales activity. That number is higher than last year, but again, still nowhere near pre-pandemic or just the year 2019. So total listings are up 12% this past month, but again, it's recovering from those unicorn or what I like to call crazy years of 2020 through 2022, but it hasn't recovered before those. Number of active listings, again, it's higher than last year, but still nowhere near 2019 or what would be considered currently a balanced market. But you can see, yes, it's up. It's up about 19% from last May, but overall, month to month, you can see that that line is fairly flat. So that's one of the reasons why prices continue slowly climbing higher, which I'll show you here in a bit. So again, not any major increases. You can see the gap between that orange line and that green line is still pretty big. It would take a huge, steep increase in the number of active listings to make up that difference. And that's either going to come from lack of sales, so closings really dropping down to almost nothing, or a ton of new listings hitting the market for sale. But that's unlikely because we'd have to double or almost triple where we're currently at. Pending listings have been riding pretty high this year. You can see that we're up 3% from last May. However, that's only up 0.5% from 2019 or the pre-pandemic year. So you can see it has dipped. That dip actually occurred earlier this year than it typically does. You can see we usually don't see a slowdown in sales activity until about June, but that's because rates peaked when it went through another little peak this past month. So not sure how that's going to shake out if we're going to see another bump at the end of summer, but it's just a little interesting. It's what we've seen kind of on the ground too. Number of sold listings is higher than last year. Sales were up 9% in May, but you can also see that for most of the months of this year, it was actually below the sales activity or sorry, March. It was actually March and January were less than last year, but that line is still below the pre-pandemic number of sales that we saw in our area. The average sales price, again, we have only slightly increasing inventory, but pending sales are up, regular sales, closings are up, and buyer activity is up, which is why we're seeing that average sales price continue to climb. It's a good bit higher than this time last year. Part of that is just due to we've had some higher price listings sell in the last few months, but you can see it's well above where we were in 2019. As far as monthly home price appreciation, this is a look at how the median price in the market is moving. You can see May, the median price was up 6.5% compared to last May, and that average price is up 11% compared to last May. No month this year has seen a decrease in home prices compared to the same month of the previous year. So I know there's a lot of people waiting on home prices to come down, but again, this is regular economic um, reasons for home prices. There's nothing pumping this up. It is supply versus demand. Either supply has to increase or demand has to decrease for home prices to quit appreciating. And historically, home prices have always gone up year to year. There was a few years after the 2008 crisis where we saw home prices dip year after year. Typically, you see home prices fluctuate within a year, maybe 1 year to another year, but the overall trend is still increasing. And so that's just where we're at. This is normal. Well, 11% is not normal. 3, 4, 5% is normal. But as far as prices moving up, that's kind of the normal activity that we have seen for home prices throughout the decades. It's just there's a huge supply demand imbalance right now that is making those home prices move up at a faster pace than what we're used to. Here's a different number that I wanted to show you. This is the sold price to list price ratio. So this takes a look at, so when a home sells, how does that sales price compare to the price it was listed at when it went under contract? So you can see while home prices are moving up, right now buyers are able to get sellers to come down off those home prices a little bit. It's not much. Things are still selling fairly close to list price, but May was at 97.6%. So that meant on average, sellers got almost a 2.5% discount off the list price. So that's good. During those unicorn crazy years, we were seeing these numbers be at 100% or 100.5% or 101%. So everything was selling at or above list price pretty much. Well, now we're seeing most things are selling at or below list price. Not huge movement there, but we are seeing sellers come off their asking price just a little bit. This is a look at some of the towns and cities in our region. Again, I don't have enough space or enough time to hit everything, but this just kind of gives you a quick glimpse of, you look at the entire region with active sales being up 11.7%, sold 6%, pendings 5%, median 5.1%. Now, some of these numbers might differ than what I told you simply because it depends on what report and at what day I pull stats off the MLS. Things can change up a little bit. But the overall trend I want you to see is where there is inventory, there is where there's inventory, sales are up. Where there is lack of inventory, sales are down. Now that's just a general, it's not perfect because you can see Elizabethton, um, active listings are up about 5.4%, but sold and down are down. Johnson City active listings is up just under 5%, but the sales activity is down by almost 1%, and pending sales are down by 3.4%. And again, where there's inventory, the home price appreciation doesn't seem to be quite as high, but where there's a lack of inventory, those home prices are the median sales price is up really high. So that's just a quick, brief overview of where some of these places in our region sit. But you can see overall, even if sales are down and contracts are down, the median sales price is continuing to move up because even though we're making gains in inventory, we are still well below where we need to be. So it's good news, bad news, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Great if you're trying to sell a home right now because the likelihood that you're going to sell it for more than you bought it for even a couple years ago is pretty high. Good news for buyers is you're able to get sellers down off that list price a little bit, so you don't feel like you're overpaying. Uh, And most of the buyers I talk to feel like they're getting fairly good deals right now. Obviously, they would like to get much better deals, but they don't feel like they're getting ripped off, which was not the case during those unicorn years. People just felt like they had to give up an arm, a leg, and mortgage one of their childs to be able to win a bidding war. We're definitely not in those scenarios right now. So I hope some of that information is helpful. Some of it might be good news for you. Some of it you might not see as bad news, but it's really just trying to give you as much information that you can to make good decisions on whether you want to sell a house or buy a house right now. So my final thoughts, again, mortgage rates are still volatile, despite what experts really want to happen. And that's because everything is hinging on what that inflation data is looking like. It's also it's a presidential election year, which tends to make things a little bit more volatile anyway. So it's just kind of a wait and see. Experts are trying to predict things, but they keep having to make revisions because their predictions end up being wrong. So it really is just a wait and see game. Let's just see what happens. Let's adjust accordingly when it does happen. That's how I'm advising my clients right now. If you're trying to predict or play the market, you're going to lose. Let's instead try to adapt and overcome the current market. And then persistent low inventory levels continue despite the year out with gains, resulting in continued upward pressure on home prices. So yes, we're making small gains in inventory, but we really need large gains to stop that home price appreciation. And we're just not seeing that happen. I mean, a gain of 5 homes to 20 homes from 1 month to the next is not going to do it. It would have to be 500 to 2,000 homes from 1 month to the next to start making a big appreciable difference. And I just don't think that that's possible in our market. There's not enough homes being built that could hit the market at the same time, and there's just not enough people selling right now. However, what we are starting to see is with those new number of new listings entering the market making a little bit of upward movement, and that's because people can only delay the decision to sell their house so long. What I mean by that is if the house is either too big for them or too small for them or too old for them, or maybe they're getting called back, maybe they're no longer to do work from home anymore, and they're having to move closer to where their job is. Those decisions can only be delayed so much, and people are delaying those decisions because they have a 2.5% or a 3% mortgage rate that they don't want to give up. And again, that has delayed a lot of the list normal sales that are happening as far as people listing their homes for sale, but it can only do it for so long. People are eventually just going to have to bite the bullet and do it. And so we're starting to see some of that happening. Is that going to be a dam that bust at some point or a slow trickle? That's anybody's guess. But I'm rambling and I promised I wouldn't do that. So I hope that you found this information helpful. Again, if I didn't cover something that you wanted information on, just reach out to me. I'll be glad to give you that information free of charge, no strings attached. Just because there's all kinds of things. Land sales look different than residential sales. And I'd be glad to give you any type of information that you're looking for that I am not covering here, clarifying anything for you that you need clarified. Please don't hesitate to reach out or leave a comment below. That is it for this month. We'll see you next month.